Take two. This is Jeff Young with Vicki Abelson for Game Changers. I'm going to play a song of mine called Drive, about the first time I came to California.
So I'm busy listening to make sure that, all right, so it looks like we have sound now. Jeff, I'm sorry. I don't know what the hell is going on here. And we're having all this conversation. Now we got to go back and talk to people again. Pete's trying to hook this thing up. And there's, you know, we're winging it because we're on the road. We're on location and shit happens. Okay, so.
It's like Mama said.
What did Mama say?
Mama said there'll be days like this.
Okay, Love that stuff. Sam
Yeah.
Cooke. So, okay, so we were talking before we got so rudely interrupted by I don't know what. We still have sound, right? I think we still have sound. Hey, John. Hey, Sharon. Who else is watching? We got Bill. Nick. Nick, you hearing things? Say Jeff's waving at you. Wave over there. Yeah, there you go. All right, so Jeff was telling us that you used to go to the Apollo with your dad.
Yeah.
And you saw Sly and Family Stone, and not a lot of people were in the house, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, it might have been 20 people, if that.
Oh, come on! What?
Well,
year?
they just came out. Dance to the Music had just come out. Probably, I'm sure it
We're
wasn't
talking
even.
like mid-60s. What are we talking? Late 60s? Mid-60s?
I was 17, 63 now. So when was that?
Okay, so so I was 17 then too. So we're talking. I don't know what we're talking. We're talking 70 or something. Like
Yeah.
no,
Probably,
more. We're talking like 72.
maybe.
So
Yeah.
Sly and the Family. Wait a minute. I can remember Sly and the Family Stone around when I was like in we're the same age, and I remember being in junior high school and dancing to the music. No.
But that yeah. Well, I was just entering high school then. So I mean, it just come out, and
Wow.
and nothing sounded like it. And I went to see them at the Apollo, and the way they were dressed.
Like bell bottoms and stuff.
Sly had on the rabbit boots and the knickerbocker pants.
Did he have a big fro?
He had a big fro.
Oh yeah.
And
the big. Didn't he have the big? Didn't he have the? Big,
they were very colorful,
Yeah.
And they just looked like the hippest band in the world.
And so were those 20 people appreciative of the fact that they were seeing like this unbelievable music?
Yeah, and Red Fox was just trying out jokes.
Was he filthy and fantastic?
He was really filthy. He was great.
That's very cool that your dad would take you to that.
He took us to a lot of shows.
Okay, so what was it like seeing James Brown live? I can't even imagine that.
I remember thinking that he had these bell bottoms on that looked a bit high water, and I figured it was because he had to dance.
Oh.
But
did he do the whole thing with the coat and the?
yeah, that was always happening. And at the time, I didn't think he was. I saw Joe Tex more, and I thought Joe Tex was just as good. And
Really?
And a singer named Tommy Hunt.
Okay, I don't know Joe Tex and I don't know Tommy Hunt.
Oh, Joe Tex had a bunch of hits.
I
Joe
would
Tex
know.
was great.
Okay. Like what? Can you think of one? Because I don't remember him.
Joe Tex said, what was it said? I gotcha.
I actually think I know what you're talking about.
But a song I still listen to is there's a song that he's got. My memory.
All right, it'll come to you.
To me. Yeah.
Oh wow, Nick's Beck is in England and he's watching us at 3:30 in the morning,
Boy.
and he just said it's worth the wait.
Oh, good.
All right, Nick. Hi, Norm. Hi, Sharon. All right, it looks like our sound problems are solved. I'm very happy about that. Okay, so you go to the Apollo. You're seeing this amazing music. Your dad's a singer. What kind of singer is your dad?
He liked the blues, and as I remember, he particularly liked Bobby Blue Bland, who was soul. And my father had a voice, a really good blues voice. He could sing around the house.
I was just going to say, did he just sing around the house, or did he ever sing out?
He never sang out. He just sang. I just hear him sing around the house. He never performed anything.
Did he encourage you?
Oh yeah, they were all for him. They brought my brother drums early.
Okay, so
and
now
my mother had this piano.
Wait a minute. You're in an apartment in wait, are you in an apartment or a house?
Actually, we were one of the lucky black families that had a house.
Okay, wow. Well, I didn't, yeah, wow. So that's impressive. I'm from New York too. No how.
Well, they came up from Birmingham, Alabama. They moved around up quite a bit, and they had a little house down south, which they sold, and they got a house, got a 2-family house. And the second apartment, a lot of my mother's sisters lived with us and came up. So they paved the way for my mother's siblings to come up, and also my father's brothers came up, and everybody kind of moved up around the Mount Vernon, New York area.
And so your father did this as a cook.
Yeah.
My
mother worked too. My mother was a seamstress.
Uh-huh.
She did domestic work.
Because
she came to New York first.
Oh, really? How did they meet? Do you know?
Well, they were already together, and my father went to the war, and he came back, and then he joined her in New York.
And I mean, so that was that was middle class, doing okay, having a house and.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was definitely middle class for black folks.
For black folks,
yeah.
That's right. It was pretty middle class. I mean, I grew up in an apartment. We were in an apartment, so yeah.
We lived in a mostly Italian immigrant neighborhood. We lived on the north side of Mount Vernon, which was mixed. Italians and Polish, a few black families sprinkled out.
And so when you went to school,
the south side was predominantly black, and I think Denzel Washington comes from the south side.
Oh, really?
Or from near that side.
So what was it like being in school? Were you like token black family? Were there not a lot of black kids in your school?
No, it was totally mixed.
It was totally mixed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there were less black people than there were other people on that side of town.
Do you remember the day that Martin Luther King was killed? I remember being in. We are the exact same age. I remember being in junior high school that day.
Yeah.
And I actually got dragged down the hall by my hair that day.
Really?
Yeah. But that was a pretty. We grew up in very interesting times.
I remember, for some reason, even more John Kennedy being killed.
Oh God, yeah.
Because I was in elementary school, and the janitor came in and told our teacher, and she announced it to us, and we kind of went on with our lesson, and then they had the funeral on TV, and I remember there was no cars on the street. Everybody was watching us.
They sent us home from school. It came over the loudspeaker, and they
Yeah.
sent us home when he was shot.
They might have done the same. What I remember is it being televised and being a really sad day, and everybody was watching it. There was no traffic moving on the streets.
So, all right. So let's get to happier times. So they buy your brother a drum kit, which for parents to do for their kid is pretty outrageous, because that's some pretty noisy listening that you're doing.
Well, we had a house, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have been able to play. I don't think, because my brother and I, once I decided I wanted to play organ, eventually they want us to have things. They probably would have been musicians if they could have themselves. So they somehow made it work. And by the time I was kind of in my early teens when I decided I wanted to play organ, so I got this smaller Hammond organ on the layaway. Remember the layaway?
I remember the layaway.
You put a little bit of money down and you play it. And I was also already working a job.
I was going to say, how'd you do layaway? Because you have to make payments when you do layaway.
I made enough, payments. I was working first as a dishwasher, and then I did room service at the same hotel my father worked at.
Your dad was a cook.
Hotel, yeah.
Where was the hotel?
It was in Bronxville.
So was that a big commute for you guys?
No.
No.
It was pretty easy to get to.
So did you work the shifts that your dad did so you could get to work?
He was always there. So when I was working. So otherwise I would take the bus.
So you did the layaway and you got yourself.
Yeah, and then me and my brother were playing very loud in the basement of my parents' house, and the police used to shut us down.
Come on!
They shine lights through the windows, tell us to cut it out.
And so, what kind of music are you and your brother playing?
Well, we were black hippies, Fly had happened, and we were listening to a lot of WNEW.
Oh God!
FM, so we were
Pete
listening.
Fornatale, those days, Scott Muni. Oh
Roscoe,
God! Oh God! Yeah. And when they played free-form music. I mean, there wasn't a playlist back in those days. They would play what they wanted.
They were all great. I remember Alison Steele's.
Oh God, the Nightbird, loved her.
And so we were trying to learn how to play that by ear. We were, and some of it was even like British progressive rock,
So you're playing like Jefferson Airplane? You play what do you
no,
what are you
Jefferson
what are you
Airplane.
playing?
We were playing
Traffic? What are you playing?
We were playing Traffic.
Were
we
you?
listened a lot. Traffic was very big in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cream, a lot of Cream.
Mm-hmm.
Then bands like Free, Paul Rogers.
God, yeah.
So Jethro Tull at the Fillmore East quite a few times.
So did I. I bet you I was there the first day they did Aqualung. It was the benefit tour, but they introduced Aqualung. It was at the Fillmore East, and it was the first time that they played it live.
Yeah.
Were you there that day?
But what I remember is the first album.
This what? Is that this was stand up?
Stand up. I think.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So you were like me, because we were like the little kids at the Fillmore. We were like little kids, 14, 15 when that was happening.
And I used to go there with my brother because I was too young to go in. And I remember I just wrote a song about this. Because,
did you really?
Yeah, because I remember how amazed I was at St. Mark's Place. How it was kind of like a wonderland. There was no other block I know of that was like. It still has a charm, but there were all these shops and stores and different things. And I remember buying some saddlebags.
Saddlebags.
For my books in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And from a place that was later called Trash and
Vaudeville.
But before that, it was called Granny Takes a Trip.
Oh God, I don't remember that.
And that's where I heard All Along the Watchtower by Hendrix. And for some reason, it just like I remembered because it was blasting and whatever system they had in that. And they had all, now I didn't know what it was, but what it was they had a lot of, the fashion was like very much from Britain.
Oh, hell yeah.
Kind of like, the platform shoes, really cool stuff. A lot of button-down t-shirts, but
wait, button-down t-shirts?
Yeah, like you can still buy these things, but they were really hip that you could wear a vest over, French jackets. I brought a suede French jacket from there.
Trash and Vaudeville was the shit. I bought a lot of stuff at Trash and Vaudeville.
I brought these purple platform shoes that were too small for me, but I had to have them.
Did you wear them?
Yeah, I wore them when I could, but I was kind of like, I was a little shy about it because, nobody else I knew, and somehow I always kind of found the money for these things,
Yeah.
And I worked, but my father was really generous.
That's really sweet. Yeah. By the way, when I met Mike Finnegan, I almost had a nervous breakdown because he played on Electric Ladyland. He played on Still Raining, Still Dreaming, which is like my favorite song. He played on that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Mike Finnegan is one of the greatest organ players, there is.
The fact that he played with Hendrix, yeah, he is. But to have that lineage, oh my God. So, all right, so obviously we were listening to the same music back in the day. So you're playing that music, but you have gospel R&B kind of roots too, right? Because that's
well,
the music
what happened was when I got in high school, maybe my third year of high school, I met this guitar player named Craig, who was playing with this band that he suggested I should come here. And I went to hear this band, and the thing that was amazing about it was the leader of the band, who was T.M. Stevens.
Okay, tell me.
T.M. Stevens later played, he did a lot of stuff with Narada Michael Walden. He played on the, kind of co-produced Joe Cocker's Unchain My Heart.
Oh.
Larger than life bass player. One of the first really great bass players. And I joined that band, and the repertoire was Ohio players and James Brown, a little bit of Chicago, but it was an R&B top 40 band. Were you okay? So how did the singing start? When did that start for you? kind of in that band because TM sang everything.
Mm-hmm.
The trumpet player sang a few things, but they wanted to know if I could sing Stevie Wonder's first album had come out. And I could sing, but I never was asked to sing, but I think I sung Superwoman, you know. Mary wants to be a superwoman. Because I needed a ballad. And I pulled it off.
And when you sing, could you sing harmony? Did you have to, how did you learn how to sing harmony?
That came much later on.
Uh-huh.
You know, there wasn't much harmony in that band because it was pretty much all TM playing bass and doing James Brown covers. And what he was good at was keeping people on the dance floor. Mm. So we go from one James Brown tune to another.
So now you're in school and you're doing this music?
In high school.
You're in high school?
Yeah.
And how, are you an okay student? Are you doing okay in school?
I was doing all right. I wasn't going to drop out or fail.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't care for it too much. I wasn't an overachiever.
But you went to music school after?
Well, after high school I did, but before that,
uh-huh,
through a guitar player I knew, I met this piano teacher who started to teach me about jazz, about how to approach jazz and harmony and things. And that was kind of towards the end of high school. And then...
Are you a jazz enthusiast?
Yeah. And what happened was, so I was playing rock and R&B and different things. Mm-hmm. Then I heard McCoy Tyner, and then which totally blew me away, because you know we were playing really loud, trying to hang with the rock bands. Yeah. All of a sudden I heard this piano player that was louder than anybody, mm-hmm, just in intensity. Mm-hmm. I never heard anybody. I was never really that interested in piano before I heard McCoy Tyner.
Wow. And
then I wanted to know all about it. And I realized there was a lot to it. There was a lot that came before McCoy, mm-hmm, that I learned through my teacher, Armin Danian. And who taught, I think he taught at the Westchester Conservatory, but I started taking private lessons with him. Mm-hmm. I was spending more time in New York. And then I applied for Ithaca College.
Good school.
And I minored in music and was a communications major. And at a certain point I realized I was going to be a musician and I was less interested in communications.
Okay, so what was the original dream that got you to major in communication? What did you think you were going to do?
Well, to get a job.
And what was that? What kind of job did you see yourself doing?
Well, it was TV and radio communications. You know?
Okay.
And but as I took some courses in my first year of college, and I wasn't crazy about it, but I was playing in the jazz big band in Ithaca College, and I realized that was where I was going, and I started playing bands, and I was just playing instrumental. I was always writing, coming up with stuff, you know, and I started.
And you're writing jazz?
Yeah, writing, you know.
Wow.
Kind of. The fusion thing had started to happen, so there was instrumental things. I wasn't really writing for my voice yet.
Okay.
That came later, you know. That came, the singing came because at a certain point I realized I got tired of I kind of went back to what I heard going to the Apollo with my father and appreciating singers. And at a certain point I realized I didn't have to be the best jazz piano player. I just had to play the right parts for the right singer. And that's how I roll, even today. And then and at a certain point I started writing songs.
But I was going to say, you have a solo career. I mean, you have a whole solo thing going on. You have a few albums of your own.
Yeah, but a lot happened before that happened.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened. So how do things, so you're playing in a band with your brother, then you're doing this jazz thing in college.
I played with TM's band, R&B band in school.
Okay.
Then I started playing, I learned quite a bit of jazz harmony, and I realized there were people writing songs. Whether it be Steely Dan and even Cream had some other knowledge. You know, it was like the idea that you could, first I listened to bands, I mean, you call them jam bands now. Mm-hmm. But there was something about bands like Cream, what Hendrix was doing, that wasn't a simple straight ahead kind of blues thing. You know, it was a lot of improvising. And to a certain extent, there was some British keyboard players like Brian Auger, Keith Emerson, Stevie Winwood, who I became aware of, you know. When I started playing piano, though, you know, after hearing McCoy, I think what it was, it had a lot to do with Miles, too, was hearing Jack Johnson. You know, hearing Jack Johnson and hearing this music that went right down the middle of the street between rock and jazz. And the sense that, and also Tony Williams' Lifetime. And because I'd already known, I was kind of a rock guy, and I knew rock guys that were trying to play jazz and didn't know what they were doing. Then I heard these jazz guys playing rock. Herbie
Hancock kind of straddled both those worlds too.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
All the guys in Miles' bands, you know. And then you realize that, and you know, I think I might have seen them. I was never interested in like what the Grateful Dead did, for example. Still don't get that.
Okay, so were you interested in what Jackson Browne was doing back in the day?
Didn't know anything about Jackson Browne.
Okay, wow. Bonnie
But
Raitt,
when I met him, and I heard his songs, I realized they were playing his songs in Ithaca, and I knew some people that had a vocal group, and they were singing Desperado by the Eagles, you know. But I wasn't interested in that at the time. You know?
Okay, so we're going to talk about how that interest grew. So, okay, so you're straddling the line between jazz and rock.
Yeah.
Are you writing that kind of music?
I wrote some things, you know, after I heard Herbie and Return to Forever. I realized there was this kind of instrumental music you can write with the lead guitar playing the melody. And I got in a Fender Rhodes. And when I got to college, I had a band that was playing. I was writing music that kind of had that, but I was always interested in music that grew, you know. So
music that grew. Explain what you mean.
That grooved.
That grooved.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was always kind of in my DNA. You know. So.
And is your father and mother being supportive of this journey you're on?
They were supportive the whole way.
That's really great.
You know.
You have that.
They wasn't sure I could make a living doing it. You know,
so what they want you to do? So is that where the communications major came from? Did they encourage that?
And just the idea that, you know, I mean, there's this thing my father used to say to me that a lot of people have heard, you know, he said, you know, Jeff, it's all right you playing that music, but man, you got to eat.
And so when did you realize, so you said you made the decision in college that you were going to be a musician. Were you making some money doing it at the time?
I didn't have to because I was in college, but what really made me realize it was possible was I spent my junior year in college in London.
Wait, you did a...
Yeah, Ithaca College had a center in London.
Oh, wow.
And that was a big influence on me. That made me realize I could be a pro because for some reason I met a lot of British people that were really excited about the fact that there was a Black American over there.
Is that so?
Yeah. And later on, what I realized later on was that the Brits always had this interest in Black American music.
Really?
You know, always. All British rock and roll is based on.
On the blue, yeah.
On whether it be the Beatles, the Stones, what you can think of. And later on, I realized that a lot of it they discovered, you know, during World War II from the soldiers. You know, the British and American soldiers. American soldiers brought either their guitars or their records with them, and people started collecting. And you know, and at a time when the black music was being segregated in America.
Right.
You know.
Right.
You know. I mean, of course, it was different with Alan Freed and maybe Dick Clark.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know.
Yeah, the whole Buddy Holly thing when they'd go on those tours, and there would be the black hotels, yeah. So, did you get to hear any great music while you were in London?
Heard a lot of great music.
Did you get to hear any of your heroes play?
I met a few of them. I played with a few of them.
Back then?
Yeah.
Like who?
Well, the first night I went there, what happened was I used to subscribe to the Melody Maker in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so interested in London.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew about Ronnie Scott's because I saw these ads for Ronnie Scott's club, the Melody Maker. So the first day I got there, I went to Ronnie Scott's. And I remember a Cedar Walton quartet was playing there, which was like a great jazz quartet.
Mm-hmm.
With Bob Berg and Cedar Walton, these guys. And there was no place to sit, you know, so I was standing up near the bar,
mm-hmm.
trying not to get in the waitress's way. And there was this other guy standing up, too, who was pretty drunk and pissed at the time, you know. And I kept looking at this guy, and we started talking. I realized he looked very familiar. It was Chris Wood from Traffic.
Oh.
You know. And at one point he said to me, because he was going crazy with living, he said, man, I wish I could play saxophone like that. And I already was familiar with, you know.
Wow.
You know. But it was Chris Wood, you know.
That's
Yeah.
pretty nice. Did you end up ever playing with him?
No, but I played with the drummer that played with Brian Auger.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, I went back to London
Mm-hmm.
after I graduated. And because I developed some friends.
So what year you're in London in like 76-ish?
76, yeah.
Uh-huh. So what I'm trying to remember what the music British rock in 76.
Well, at that point, I was more into jazz.
Oh, okay.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I was playing, I started playing gigs. I had to borrow my friend's Fender Rhodes over there. I started playing pub gigs. There's a lot of pub gigs.
Mm-hmm.
In Kensington, where I was staying where I was rooming with these friends of mine, and what they were playing with was like R&B and fusion jazz, different things like that, you know. So I was listening out and there were a lot of good, really good jazz. Always been a lot of great British jazz piano players,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like. I listened to over there. Oh, it's a bunch of guys. And through a trumpet play I started playing with some guys who weren't well known,
Mm-hmm.
but they were on the scene. And I started hanging out at this place called the 606 Club with my friend Dave DeFries, and which is still open. And every time I go to London, I've played a gig there.
Wow.
They're friends of mine.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also these great South African musicians who were living in London.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of people were there. So I was really trying, I was less interested. But after I went back the second time, I got hired to play a tour with a French rock band called Gong, Pierre Molin's Gong, who I met through Alan Holsworth,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who I played with through this drummer named John Stevens. And I still wasn't singing that much, you know.
Are you out of school at this point when you're doing
Outside of
this?
school, yeah.
You're out of school.
Yeah.
And so you've made the decision you're a professional musician, that's what you're doing. That's your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wasn't sure. I still wasn't sure I could.
Did you have to do a day job when you were doing this?
No, I went back over, and I basically had a little bit of money. At first, when I went back over,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a girlfriend in Sweden, and that lasted. We realized within a couple of months that wasn't going to last. One of my British friends was living up in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
Went to visit him, and I made my way back to London. That's when I started working, you know. And the main thing about being in London was that I was appreciated in a way that made me feel like I could be a pro musician. And I stayed there as long as I could.
So what did that mean, Jeff? Were they
and
respectful of you? Or
and that there was work there, and people hired me, and I made friends there. And so I was there as long as I could. And then I came back and stayed at my parents again, and did odd jobs and different things. And through some friends of mine, I moved into New York till I got on my feet a bit, and did a lot of different things in New York.
Like what?
Well, I played gigs with different people, and at a certain point, through a friend of mine.
You doing jazz gigs? What are you doing?
Well, doing whatever I could.
Uh-huh.
And by that time, I started writing songs, and I met some musicians at Preachers next to the Bitter End.
I remember.
And through a friend of mine, a guy I actually knew in Ithaca College, in Ithaca, named Chris Bishop. I got hired to sing a jingle.
Oh, wow.
So I was trying different things. I was playing reggae. I was playing R&B.
Did you study voice at all?
No.
No.
No, I just.
Started
but
singing.
I knew I could sing. And there were a lot of people in my ear already, certain. There was a kind of an R&B, basic R&B kind of singing that I probably learned from listening to Motown, Stevie to a certain extent, and also because I had an uncle that played a lot of Sam Cooke. It's like a Sam Cooke fanatic.
Oh yeah.
That came back around, And then what happened was I realized there was this thing with playing and singer-songwriters that was less than more, as far as what you need to play on keyboards. And that influenced me quite a bit. And at a certain point, I did a tour with Sean Colvin.
Okay, so now I know that was pivotal for you and sort of changed your life. So how did you meet Sean? How did that happen?
Through John Leventhal.
Okay, and how did
Who was
that?
a producer who was they were a couple at the time. And they were looking for a keyboard player to do a tour.
And how old are you when that's going on?
Well, I was out of school, and I was even before. I'm trying to remember if I was, because I had a marriage before this. A lot of stuff had happened. I was playing around.
But you're making a living as a musician, and you're...
Yeah, and I started touring first with a guy named Curtis Stigers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Started touring with Curtis Stigers.
Is that your first touring gig? Is that your first big gig?
The first ones were when I was living in London.
Okay.
And then there was a long time when nothing happened. And then I did a tour with a reggae band, a guy named Max Romeo. But I was just looking for work. And Sean hired me, which is where Jackson heard me.
Okay, so early on...
We came through California. I mean, I'm going quite a bit forward, But
you played with a lot of people before you played with Jackson.
Yeah,
or did that happen simultaneously? Did all these other...
I played with quite a few people, but mostly with Curtis Stigers I worked with longest, touring-wise. And then I had this band. I used to play with these guys. And then what happened? What happened was, through a friend of mine, I got introduced to Bob Telson, who wrote the Gospel of Clonas. And Donald Fagen became aware of me through that.
Now, is this before Jackson?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And he hired this whole band to do this thing called New York Rock and Soul, which was recorded live with Michael McDonald, Phoebe Snow, Patty Austin.
Phoebe was a friend of mine. What year is this that this happened?
This must have been early either very late 80s or
I saw it.
You did?
Yeah, Blossom Music Center in Ohio.
Wow.
Oh, but I did the first one. We only did play the Beacon.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
This was late 80s, you said?
Late 80s or 91.
Mm-hmm.
Or 90.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And which kind of put me on the map, you know. Also around that time is through my friend Chris Bishop, I was trying to sing jingles. Didn't know quite how to get in there, but through Chris Bishop and this producer he was working for, we happened to be looking for a singer to sing a Mellow Genuine Draft beer commercial, which I did, and it did really well.
Wow.
And
did you know Will Lee at this time?
that's where I met Will.
Because he was a big jingle guy.
Yeah. Although I sang with a lot of his friends, I don't think I sang on a session with Will.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is that I still don't know when Will became aware of me, you know, because people like Will and Ferrone were like, or anybody associated with the Brecker brothers were like on Mount Olympus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody, I think about it now, I just came back from Japan doing this festival with Randy Brecker.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
And everybody, and I remember, like, the thing with the Brecker brothers, everybody in that band, there were musicians in New York who were learning things from them.
Mm-hmm.
Every drummer I knew was trying to play like Steve Gadd,
Mm-hmm.
you know. All the keyboard players knew about, you know, Richard T. or Don Gromnick,
Mm-hmm.
you know. All the guitar players wanted to be like, you know, Jeff Mironov or a bunch of guys doing sessions, you know. But there was an elite group of musicians guys who really knew their way around jazz and R&B, and weren't snobbish, you know, about any of that stuff. Just loved it all, you know. And so a lot of things happened, and I'm playing with Will in a way that I never did in New York. He's kind of brought me back to New York as a result.
Interesting.
You know.
Okay, so so you haven't gotten out here yet. You're still, you're in New York still. You're doing this session work. You're still playing jazz.
Well, yeah. At that point, I was, you know, there wasn't any money playing jazz, and I wasn't really good enough compared to guys who were dedicated to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Are you still doing R&B also, and rock?
I'm basically an R&B guy through and through. You know, I mean, a lot of other things, all those other things I try to play come through it, but rhythm and blues is really basically where I come from. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
As a singer and as a player.
Okay, so now obviously you're singing, you're doing jingles. So have you written your first album yet? What are you doing?
I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. You're writing songs.
And I had a band. Well, what happened was there were some other guys from New York who came back to New York after Ithaca College, like I did, and we formed a band.
Mm-hmm.
And we played around New York, and we went up to Ithaca to play.
So what kind of venues are you playing in New York?
What's the place on the east side? Home.
Oh, yeah.
Home.
Mm-hmm.
We played the Bitter End. We played Preachers. We played...
I used to book the Rock and Roll Cafe.
Oh, okay.
Back in mid-'80s to 90. Mm-hmm.
We played a bunch of places.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain point, I'm trying to remember when I started playing with Vivino. I knew about Vivino, but I knew his drummer at the time, a guy named Gary Gold.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this thing called the Little Big Band.
Uh-huh.
That I became one of the keyboard players for. And that's when I started playing with Jimmy initially.
Mm-hmm.
You know. and a lot more since we both moved to LA.
Oh yeah, I've seen you guys play together. So when does Sean happen? When does that next stage of your career happen?
That happened. That was a short tour. But when we played here,
that's when Jackson
heard me. Introduced himself to me, and I didn't really think much of it at the time.
And okay, so you're still not a Jackson Browne fan at this point.
I didn't know who he was.
This is so crazy to me.
You know, I remember he asked me, "So you prefer to be called Jeff or Jeffrey?" I said, "Call me anything you like." You know, I just didn't know.
Did you?
I knew about Bonnie Raitt, who was also there. You know.
Were you a Bonnie Raitt fan?
Yeah, but I also.
It wasn't your genre.
Well, it was, but I just wasn't that aware. I was becoming more aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
you hadn't played with Steely Dan yet. You hadn't done that whole thing yet.
No, that happened after touring with Jackson for years.
Oh, okay.
That happened as a result of me finding out through Bonnie that they were going to do another New York rock and soul, which didn't happen. And Donald asked me. I mean, it was 15 years afterwards.
Oh wow!
He asked me if I wanted to play with Steely Dan, so I did the tours. Well, I did. Donald came out with a solo album, which I called Morph the Cat, which I was part of, and then I worked with Steely Dan with him and Walter. You know.
Okay, so all right, so let's dial it back. So Jackson approaches you, and
they were looking. His band was already set, and they were looking for one other guy.
Okay.
And I think it might have been Scott Thurston's suggestion because they had everybody else, and they heard me. And they thought, and then I think they said to themselves, well, "What about that guy?" You know, when I was playing with Sean, because they saw that when I played organ, I played piano.
And are you singing with her?
Yeah. And then I started working with Jackson. Then I met my wife through Vonda Shepard.
Okay, so how did that happen?
Well, Valerie Carter was Jackson's first choice as the backup singer. She was already busy with, I should say Valerie Carter, God rest her soul, but she's no longer with us. But she recommended Vonda, and I was still in New York. So Jackson flew me out because he wanted to hear the blend, you know. And within half a song, it was just so obvious that Vonda was good, was right for this gig because great singer, you know. And then she invited me. Wanda said, "Hey, you know, I came out to stay with Scott Thurston." He said, "Hey, I'm sitting in with my boyfriend's band at the Mint. You should come down." So me and Scott went down there, and it was Michael Landau and Abe Jr., and it was ferocious. It was so good. And she introduced me to this friend of hers who I started talking to. And there was something about the quality of our conversation that stuck with me, you know. And we went back on the road. The tour started with Jackson. Make a long story short, I asked Vonda about her friend. She said, "Funny, she wanted to know more about you."
Oh, this is your wife you're telling me about.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. She came to the gig, and we were talking. You know, just talking. You know, it wasn't any big deal, but I remembered that because it was a good conversation. You know, and so there was an interest there, which I followed through. And what happened was we were together. I was coming out here a lot to work with Jackson. I was still in New York. She'd come to New York too. And at a certain point, it just all lined up. And I was already a bit fed up with having to move every other year in New York. And what was affording me to live there was going on the road anyway. I wasn't singing enough jingles to just stay put.
right.
I wasn't among the elite.
Like Will Lee.
Like Will.
Will sang a whole lot of jingles. Plus, he had the Letterman gig all those years, so that made it kind of sweet.
Yeah.
We have a question.
Yeah.
It's from Nick Beck in England. He said he has to get to bed because it's 4:10 a.m. So I want to get his question.
Yeah. Get the question.
So the question is, let me see.
By the way, that's Pete George behind the camera.
Hey, it's me. Were you at the Apollo when Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards were the house band there?
Possibly, but I wouldn't have known who they were at that time.
Got it.
Yeah.
There you go, Nick. Go to bed. Good night.
All right, now you can go to sleep, Nick, and you can. I'll do a watch party tomorrow. You can watch with me again. So you're with your. So now, when you first start playing.
Wait a minute. Let me answer that question more. Is that I was hardly a teenager when I went to the Apollo with my father. You know. So I was just beginning to play.
Right.
And I'm not sure they were there then.
Yeah.
And also, your awareness was probably not what it became. Obviously,
Right.
you were just a kid. So now, when you start playing with Jackson, you do so coming in not a huge fan from the whole catalog and everything. Do you become a huge fan really fast?
It took a while, but what happened was, because I had to learn parts, I started realizing, it was really through Jackson, well, maybe a little bit before that, but I realized that before, you know, when I listened to songs, I didn't always pay that much attention to the words. You know, I remember, like for example, when I heard I'm a Man and Give Me Some Lovin' by the Spencer Davis Group, I didn't know what Stevie Wonder was singing about, and it didn't matter because his voice, sound of his voice was so cool. You know.
And the groove of the tune.
Yeah, you know. But when I started reading the lyrics and listening to Jackson, I realized, oh man, this is like an art.
He's really a storyteller.
You know? I mean, I noticed it with Dylan because WNEW used to play. I remember being a fan of It's All Right, Ma. You know what I mean? And just Dylan solos, you know, because they played a lot of Bob Dylan on WNEW-FM. And you couldn't help but notice that, you know. But I didn't know to what extent Dylan influenced other people, you know. I mean, later on I figured it out. But I knew that he was important, but it seemed like he became more important as time went on. The music was changing.
Well, I was a huge fan in the 60s. Yeah, it depends on what you came up through. I was a white hippie, so Dylan was the shit always.
Yeah.
And Simon and Garfunkel, were they in your?
I certainly was aware of Bridge Over Troubled Water, but I don't think and I heard all that stuff, but I really was never a fan of Paul Simon's voice. See, what it was for me to listen to the words, I had to dig the voice. And I was always more of a fan of anybody who sounded somewhere near Ray Charles. You know, or Sam Cooke, or Marvin Gaye.
Hard not to love all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dylan didn't sound nothing like that. Neither did Paul. Yeah.
But he certainly influenced Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
It's fair enough.
But also, actually, Jackson's got a lot of soul.
Got a lot of soul. But also, they were influenced by, as I got to know the Jackson, I realized that the staple singers were important to him. You know, Dylan to a certain extent. And then, you know, I think Lowell George was a big influence on Jackson. You know. And I'd heard Little Feat, but after I moved out here, through friends of mine, whether it be Bob Palabas, you know, I was aware of Raitt, and I realized, you know, how all those guys kind of knew each other and played on each other's records, you know. But I became aware of that later on rather than before.
And so, when you're touring with Jackson, what's your personal relationship with him like in those early days? Is it?
It was really good, and it's still good. I mean, he treated me. I mean, now I'm more of an employee, but he at the time it was like, and still he viewed me as a. I mean, the only co-writing I've ever done that actually, made a little money was with Jackson.
So what is that like? What is that process like? Sitting down with Jackson and writing music together.
Well, it wasn't. I only did that once. But what happened was that band that I joined Jackson with, Kevin McCormick, Mark Oldenburg, and Mauricio Liwag. Particularly with Kevin and Fritz, we just had, without anybody saying anything, we just knew what to play with each other. If somebody started something, usually we'd start with Kevin. He played bass line, Fritz would play the drums, and we just answered each other. And since the sound checks were always long with Jackson, Jackson would come in after taking a phone call. He knew something was going on, and he realized he can write songs from what we were playing.
Really?
And so it was Jackson that decided that there was stuff he could use that he wouldn't necessarily come up with himself. And
and he gave everybody credit. That's very cool.
He's the fairest man in the land.
That is really cool.
When it comes to that,
because a lot of people would not do that.
They certainly wouldn't.
That's right. That's very cool.
He did the right thing.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm sure that contributes to why you've been with him so long.
Yeah, I think, there was a living to be made working with Jackson. I didn't know, you never know when you join somebody's band how long it's going to last. I'm even surprised that it keeps going.
How many years is it?
It's been since '93, so I mean, off and on. I mean, I did a lot of things in between because there were gaps between records, and I did Steely Dan tours. I worked with Sting too.
Yeah. Now what's that about?
I did a Tracy Chapman tour.
Okay. Yeah. You've played with a lot of people. Let's go back. So, what's the first crazy gig you do with Jackson? What's like the biggest, like, what's your first like trip that you like walk out on stage and you go, holy shit, I'm like doing it? Like, what was that moment for you? Do you remember?
There were several moments, but
what are a few highlights?
I remember Santa Barbara being a highlight. I remember a benefit or so with that he threw to raise money. He's always been good about helping people out. He had a benefit for Jorge Calderon's, whose wife was battling cancer, I think. And I remember Raitt and David Lindley doing a thing on that show. That was amazing. There were a lot of great shows that involved other people too, benefits and things with Bonnie. And
is that how you came to play with Bonnie?
Yeah, I only played with Bonnie. But Bonnie liked me enough to hire me to sing on a couple of her records, sing background vocals on a couple of her things.
Nice.
She was never that sure about my keyboard playing.
Really?
She liked my singing.
That's interesting. And how did you come to play with Bruce?
Oh, well, that was a highlight.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was, it was pretty early on when playing with Jackson. There was this benefit at this lake, Castaic Lake? The Castaic Lake? Well, there was a lake, there was a benefit. I think it was for MS or something, and what it was Jackson was always good at having other artists play with his band, so he could so Jackson's band we rehearsed It was Eric Burdon. So we rehearsed Spill the Wine.
Mm-hmm. Were you an Eric Burdon? Were you an Animals fan back in those?
Oh yeah, I was a big Animals. I was more of an Animals fan than I was the Beatles or the Rolling Stones.
No kidding.
Love the Animals.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I mean, more than anybody of those bands from Britain, because I was aware of the Animals before, way before Traffic.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I knew that there was something very black about the Animals, and the way Eric sung, you know. Mm-hmm. And later on, I realized, you know, they did their homework with John Lee Hooker, a lot of different people, you know. But anyway, so it was Eric Burdon, and we rehearsed Born in the USA and Route 66 in case Bruce showed up, you know. And so we get to the gig. It was a very odd gig because I remember Larry Hagman was there. Basically, there were these guys.
From My Dream of Jeannie?
Yeah, there were these guys with Buddha, Jackson's manager, who had this kind of motorcycle club.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, they weren't like the Hells Angels or anything like that. They just loved motorcycles and they hung out.
Like what year is this, approximately?
It might have been 94, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Larry Hagman was there, and
okay, that's just
he looked
weird.
like he was trying to hang, but he just seemed like, you know, you never forget that smile, you know.
He was kind of a redneck, wasn't he?
I'm not sure what he was, but I mean, I didn't really get to talk to him, but I remember Michael Vincent was there.
Wow, I had a big crush on him.
And who I knew right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But he was drunk. He was kind of off his face. But
Didn't
he was happy
Boots
to be
take
there.
him down?
Huh?
I think Boots took him down, didn't it?
Probably.
Yeah, I think it did.
And but that was the first time I saw somebody that was famous that had kind of like got sailed too close to the sun, like Icarus or something. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't. It's one of the first people I realized that with all that fame, like that you didn't necessarily know him because of their movies. Their life might have been totally different. There was something totally different about him in the flesh, you know. But I remember talking to Eric Burdon about Hendrix, and the conversation came up because the first Eric Burdon War record, there's this cover where this black woman sitting on a wall with long legs, and he's holding her ankles, and he's between her. So I asked him, I asked Eric Burdon who she was. I can't remember what. And it was a friend of his who had a crush on Jimi Hendrix, you know. But Hendrix didn't really want to get too close to her for some reason, you know. She kind of spooked Hendrix, you know. Good friend of Eric's. And we spoke a lot about Hendrix, who we was good friends with. And he was a great guy. And we did Spill the Wine. And he drew that story out. That version must have been like 15 minutes long.
I saw him do it 2 years ago over at the pier, and I got to tell you, he still got it, man.
Yeah.
He has still got. He did that song again. It was
Yeah.
like a 15-minute version. It kicked ass.
Yeah, he's always had a vibe, you know. And then, so Bruce shows up, and I remember.
Are you Are you a Bruce fan before this?
I wasn't really.
Me either.
I really wasn't. But you know,
I am now.
we played a set with Jackson, and
Are you now?
yeah.
Me too. I
But
mean,
for-
I came to it late.
for several reasons. though.
Okay.
So we played these sensitive songs by Jackson.
These sensitive
Bruce-
songs.
Yeah, because they are sensitive
They are
songs, you know.
sensitive songs.
And Bruce comes on like gangbusters, and he's playing the chords to Born in the USA. And before he even starts singing, he looks every one of Jackson's band members in the eyes as if to say, all right, you got it, you know, you're playing the song with me now, you got it, you know, I mean, it's just like, it's like, come on with it, like, don't fuck around, you know. And he just like revved us up before he even sang a note. And I was really impressed with that. Because I mean, I come from, my thing with anybody who's fronting a band is that I want to be inspired. I want to, if the front guy's really delivering and really giving us all to the song and the audience, you know, there are no mistakes, you know, and that's what it was like. You know, we played the shit out of those songs. We were 66 with Bruce, you know, and he was like, you know, he was going for it. We weren't his band. He could care less, you know. He was making us his band for those 2 songs.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was great. And because I never really...
So did that make you start becoming, you said there were a few reasons why you became a fan. So did
because I wasn't crazy about the records, you know. And then later on, during that time also, when Bruce had a different band than the E Street Band, there was a girl I knew singing background vocals, a girl named Angel Rogers, I think, who was part of that band, and she put me on the guest list when they played Meadowlands, and that's when I got it, because I don't know if it was just that it was in New Jersey.
Seeing Bruce live.
Jesus Christ, he could, you know, he just would look at a section of the audience and they would lose their minds. He was just like, I never seen anybody work everybody up in an arena quite like that. You know, I mean, it was really impressive. And now, after seeing, you know, the solo thing, and how he talked about those songs, you know.
I didn't see it.
Oh my God.
Oh.
You know, because I couldn't afford the ticket price to go see him solo, and I wasn't sure I wanted to, but there's something about this thing that's on Netflix now, with him playing solo, and them telling stories about those songs and whatnot. At a certain point, I don't know if this is true or not, but there's something about Bruce and being from New Jersey where I thought he must have gone to some black churches and heard what preachers do. Heard the power of what a certain black, because as far as performance goes, there are certain black preachers in Baptist churches or Pentecostal churches that can move anybody. You know, there's something about...
He is preacher-like. He totally is.
He could almost be an evangelist.
That makes sense.
If
I never
he
thought
wanted
of that.
to start a truth, I mean, if he wanted to start a church, he could win over a lot of people.
There already won.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, and that makes a lot of sense. I never thought of that before. Petey, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's hear some questions, because I want to ask about Sting next.
Got it. Okay, let me see. Did you ever meet Joe Tex?
Never met him.
Okay, are you in touch with Bill Withers?
I met him once. I actually did a show with Bill Withers.
And this is one more. This is from the same person, McCoy Tyner.
Yeah, I did meet McCoy Tyner.
There you go.
I was like a little fan at a baseball park. You know,
Yeah.
They caught somebody's baseball. You know.
What's your favorite Jackson Browne song to play?
Bright Baby Blues.
Is there something you'd like to do musically that you haven't done so far?
That's
as far as playing with other people, you mean?
Just anything.
Is there somebody you'd love to play with?
I like to play with Tedeschi trucks. That would work. I'd do that.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Doyle Bramall Jr., who I've played with once. But I like really good singers, you know, more than guitar players or soloists that, you know. I'm less of a jazz person or a rock guitar guy. I'm more of well, I should first say that to me the best sound in the universe is the female voice.
Ooh. Okay, so who are some of the females that you love? Because Bonnie, to me, but her slide guitar is what kills me, and her voice. But
it starts with Aretha, really.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, it starts with Aretha.
Have you played with any great female vocalists?
Well, I thought Tracy Chapman was pretty good.
She was great.
But,
Well, I'm saying
but
was.
not on that. Well, she doesn't seem to work very much.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, fast cars. I mean, I don't know what she's been up to.
Well, she's probably just chilling.
Okay.
But I mean, she's not in the same league with Aretha, but there's a lot of other black female singers who are just great.
Have you played with them? Have you played with?
With who?
I don't know. Like.
Well, you know, I mean, I'd like to play with
I'd
love to play with Gladys Knight. You know.
That'd be nice.
You know. But you know, there's a lot of them. You know. Both black and white. I thought one of the things I did with Will in New York.
Mm-hmm.
These girls, Larkin Poe, I think are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
They're two young girls, I guess, from Tennessee,
Mm-hmm.
who you can tell were brought up on country and blues and R&B, and they're just great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd like to work with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Larkin Poe, Doe Bramwell to a certain extent. I love Tedeschi Trucks. I love the way Suzanne Tedeschi sings,
Mm-hmm.
and I love the way Derek Trucks plays guitar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's pretty good.
How about so for me, vocally, Sting is at the top of my food chain pretty
Yeah.
much. So what was that? How did that happen, and what was that like?
Well, I'm just glad I worked with him as long as I did, because
How long did you
I
work
wasn't
with
the
him?
type of piano player he was used to.
How long did you play with him, and how did that start?
It lasted about a year and a half. I worked with him long enough to put down payment on his house.
Nice.
You know,
When
because that's probably the best pay I ever received
really,
for touring.
really, was it
beyond anybody I worked with?
And was that coming straight from him, that he's good to his musicians that way?
Well, it's just that he I don't know why that was, but he always played for huge houses.
And what year was that?
About 2003,
Mm-hmm.
2004.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was recommended by a guy who was co-producing his records.
Mm-hmm.
And
What music was he playing then? I can't remember.
it was the Brand New Day tour,
Mm.
the second year of the Brand New Day tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was at his place, did a live album during 9/11 at his place in Italy.
Wow.
So we were rehearsing, playing these shows in Italy when the plane struck the World Trade Center.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to stay there an extra week because, you know, everybody was spooked about flying,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, if I can briefly say, you have to try to imagine that it's the best possible environment to rehearse and learn music in beautiful part of Italy, on a farm, with musicians from England, from Brazil, from America, and every place is doing different versions of Sting songs, and sitting under a big tree, eating the best possible Italian food you've ever had, you know, with his chef and these ladies, and playing pool with the Brazilian guys in this little playhouse he had, and all just, it was just like an adventure. And then doing these shows, and doing one the first night, and then waking up to the news of the planes at the World Trade Center,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling like the world had stopped, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or that there was going to maybe be a war.
Mm-hmm.
But right up until then, it was the best possible work situation. Because usually when you rehearse for something, you're in like, you know, a rehearsal place with no windows, and there's no vibe, you know.
Right.
Could be good food in it. I've experienced that, but you know, you're worried about your car parked outside, you know, whether or not you're gonna get a ticket or something.
Mm-hmm.
in New York. And
How long were you in Italy?
it was about maybe 3 weeks.
Nice.
And it was, I think it's this place, which I think is a vineyard now. That's what I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Fellini, not too far from Florence. Because we were able to take they had something worked out with Prada, you know, and we went shopping at Prada in Florence.
Wow.
You know, so it was.
You must have been making some coin because Prada's not cheap.
I mean, I didn't go crazy. I think I brought my wife a pair of shoes there.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty nice.
And but the band was this international band. Manu Katché was there, who I knew because I knew of his work with Peter Gabriel. And Chris McBride was part of that. Became a good friend. One of the best musician people I've ever met, Christian McBride. Chris Bodie was there, who I knew from New York. And my friend Kipper, who recommended me in the first place. And I made really good friends with the piano player I was replacing briefly, Jason Rebello, who came back to the band. And Sting kept us both because he realized, I think he liked my singing. He, just like Monty, he wasn't sure about my keyboard playing. But, you know, he was used to, like, you know, great jazz piano players. I mean, you wouldn't know from what he did with the Police that...
Oh, no, total jazz.
That he was so... He knew as much about jazz as he did. And he was a fan of great piano players.
And so how was he as a boss? Because he strikes me as very serious and sort of a taskmaster, but your story you're telling me doesn't sound like that.
He's great, you know. I mean, he had his moods like anybody else. But, you know, he's a muso. He's a guy like the rest of us that played in bands. What I figure is that he's maybe not a pure songwriter like Jackson is. By pure songwriter, I mean somebody who really only knows their music, only plays their own songs, you know. Sting played a lot of other people's music before he started writing. And that, which is why he knows so much. And he seems to know a lot about history.
He was also a teacher. Wasn't he a history teacher? He was
English.
Like maybe he was an English teacher, yeah.
You know, and I think that maybe he was a player before. I think like me, he was somebody that could sing, but he was more interested in playing before. He sang out of necessity, and then it was easy for him, and he became really good at it.
What's that like singing harmony with Sting? That's crazy right there.
I lost my voice a couple of times trying to sing, because he's a high tenor, you know. And what's amazing about him is that I think he still sings those songs. Some of the Police in the same key.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he can do that. But, you know, he keeps him, you know, he's like an athlete. He keeps in very good shape in every way.
And so what was it like playing with Steely Dan? What was that experience like? Were you a Steely Dan fan?
Later,
no, probably not.
I was more of a fan of Donald Fagen. And that happened from one of my favorite albums is The Night Fly.
Me too.
You know, once I heard The Night Fly and Gaucho, I thought, yeah, this is the best shit. You know, and it was, I mean, if you're a keyboard player and you're working for somebody else, that still is the best job you can have, because there's always something to learn, and it's always clear what your job is. You know, because you have to play the chords in a certain way. They're written with the melody in a certain way that just works really well. There's no reason to change any of that. You don't need to kind of, you know, it's already pretty, whether you're talking about Maxine or A New Frontier or, you know, that album, Night Fly is just one of the best ever.
Yep.
Go ahead. You have a question, Pete? Somebody have a question?
Will Lee is watching. He said,
Hi, Will.
Love Jeff.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Will. Who now? Will's watching, so this might temper my question. I was just going to ask you, who's the most fun to play with for you? When do you have the most fun?
Will Lee.
I knew you were going to say, but you travel the world with
I'm
me.
not just saying it because he's listening, but
Yeah.
right now, it's Will.
You guys do a lot of. I've seen you play a lot, so I know you guys play a lot.
Yeah.
And you do all kinds of music when you play with Will, right?
Yeah, I mean, it keeps me on my toes, and also, we like a lot of the same stuff, and we've only like just scratched the surface,
So what's the dream? I've seen you guys play with Ferrone and with Osnoy, and I've seen you play with Steve Postel and with Will at that. Like, so what's the dream? Well, you don't want to insult any of your friends, but what's the dream band for you guys? What's one of the dream bands for you guys?
Well, it starts with Will. Could be Ferrone. Could be Charlie Drayton. Could be Steve Jordan.
Guitar?
That all work.
Who's playing on guitar?
Well, it could be Oz, but I like it to be somebody who's also a singer.
Okay.
But it can also shred.
So like who?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because most guitar players I know, the guitar is the first thing.
Do you know Steve Conti?
Yeah, I know Steve Conti pretty well.
Steve Conti can sing his ass off.
That would work.
I'm gonna be talking to Steve. Steve's doing the show in 2 weeks, but I've known Steve for 35 years, and he's just getting off the road with Mike Monroe, and he's ready for a gig. So
really?
I'm gonna instigate something with you guys. Steve's got in my top 5 rock voices of all time.
He's a great singer.
He's a great singer.
Yeah, and he's a great guy.
And he's a great guitar player too.
I work with him a little bit in New York. We've done some things, and I play with his brother a bit too.
John's a great bass player.
But I'm just happy to be playing, to keep playing and working with good musicians. As Sting said, that it's a reward in itself, whether you're making money or not.
Nicer when you're making money.
Well, I've got to make money because my wife doesn't want to move from here.
No, and you've got 2 boys.
We live in Santa Monica. You got to make some money.
And your boys do pretty well.
Well,
doing well.
Yeah, I mean.
Talk about your sons a little bit. That's something to be proud of.
Well, I just made a new record, which isn't released yet. But my oldest son, Skylar, is a great bass player. Very strong. He's already a producer.
Oh, wow.
If a producer's somebody that always feels like they can make your album better than you can, he's one of them.
Wow. And does he sing? Does he sing also?
He's singing because he wants to be an artist, and he's in his room with our studio, his bedroom. But he won't let me hear him. He won't let me hear it. He's like shy about singing around me.
Wow.
And I don't know why that is, but it's like, because I've heard him sing a lot, and he's got a voice, but he knows that he's a work in progress as a singer.
Okay.
And it's somewhere. His influences are alternative rock and certain hip hop. He likes Radiohead.
Just got inducted.
As far as hip hop, we used to argue about Kanye, who I don't get. I don't like Kanye as much as he does, but I can roll with Drake a little bit, But he's turning me on to a lot of different kinds of music, and he's on the first track. He helped me solve a problem I was having. Well, not just a problem, but I knew something wasn't right about the song I rewrote that I used to play with my first band that's based on an Afrobeat rhythm, And it used to work with my old band. It was something about the way we played it, just everything worked, And he helped me rewrite the parts. He played bass on it, and play guitar. And I wrote it after I went to China with Will, and came upon this eating place. It's like authentic Chinese place, which had insects. And I saw these scorpions on a stick, you know. Now, I wasn't crazy enough to try this out, but I was really fascinated about that. In the back of my mind, I was still trying to figure out how to rewrite this song. And it came to me that I can make a connection about, you know, my high cholesterol and what the doctor says I shouldn't be eating. But maybe the scorpions on the stick would be better. And then I looked online about, you know, there are places around the world where people eat insects because it's plentiful and it's protein, you know.
Did you try it?
No, I didn't try it.
No.
I wasn't brave enough. But I Googled it and it said it's like potato chips.
Okay, crunchy.
Yeah.
All right.
So I thought, okay, it's my new potato chip. So I wrote this song.
Can you play it for us? All right, I want you to play us out on something. You can choose whatever.
Well, the thing is, I recorded the track. I can actually play the track so you can hear it through the speakers.
No, but I want you to.
I can't play all the parts. It's not.
All right. So how about not that? Because I don't even know how long we've been talking. We've been talking forever, like 2 hours. Yeah. But before we go, I want you to play. Any more questions, Pete? Before we.
That's it.
Okay. So pick.
Nobody loves me.
No. So pick something that. Something very Jeff Young that will show us. Something you've written that you love, that you feel really good about, that you...
I wrote a song for Ray Charles.
For Ray?
Yeah.
Well, let's go. All right, so Pete, I'm sorry, I'm going to make you do some work because we're going to go back in there. For all of you out there, we'll see you next week with Raitt Chapman. Raitt Chapman's a songwriter, she's a great songwriter. And we're gonna go listen to you play.
But you'll have to sing it with me.
Yeah, not me.
It'll be simple.
Pete's the rock and roll comedian.
Well,
he can sing with you.
There's a part in it that I quote Ray Charles on.
All right.
It's very simple.
Okay.
You can sing this.
I'm so bad.
You ready?
Go.
Yep.
Blind man from Georgia talking about Brother Ray Charles. Don't you love to hear him play?
I do, and I love to hear you play. Jeff Young, thank you so much. I'm coming to give you a hug. Thank you so much. I loved every minute of it. Thank you.
All
Pete,
right.
thank you. We'll see y'all next week.
Game changers.